guys, welcome back. It's a little bit dark, isn't it? That's better. This is the last part of your reflective journal. I hope you've been enjoying it. Something's a little bit more reflective, isn't it? You're actually writing about how you are understanding and how you change at work, isn't it? And bettering yourself or recognizing that you do it anyway and patting yourself on the back. So this is the last part. It's very small, very, very, very small, but it does get you aware of certain things. So risk management is a massive topic, but we're just going to try and bring it back to the healthcare industry. Every single piece of equipment, software, hardware, health, yourself, illnesses, infection, medicines, they all have to have a risk management assessment. And we don't see this. We don't see this much. So even if you were putting a sink in, if you were a plumber and you're putting a sink in into a cubicle, into someone's cubicle, there has to be a risk management of the taps aren't sharp. They're easy to handle. Is the bowl too big? Is it sticking out so there's not enough room for the people to move around? Is the water temperature, when you've got it just running on hot, is it going to get too hot and is it going to scald someone? So there has to be this formal process for every single little thing. There's been a huge risk management around COVID, and it's talked about how if you show symptoms, you don't go to the doctors, you stay home. That was part of the risk management program that they've started. So we're going to just talk about some of the principles of that. Everything you see and do, whether it's at home, like even when you teach your kids to bake, you have to work out, all right, well, I'll do the oven or get the biscuits out the oven because they're still too young. They might not be strong enough. They could burn themselves. You've evaluated the risk. And by you taking the biscuits out of the oven, you have eliminated a scalding or a burning. So you have acted upon that risk, if you know what I mean. So you understand that there are risks in everything that you do. And most of the time you want to eliminate the risk or control it, that you are teach someone certain methods. So you are controlling that risk. You definitely want to avoid the risk. So there's lots of means and ways of eliminating and lowering the risks. Sounds quite bad, eh? So, hazards. So you look at hazards and you look at potential risks. So this topic could be huge, eh? But we're going to try and downsize it just to health and well-being. Let me go to the next one. Oops, sorry guys. Just going to try and move the page. Here we go. I want you, when you go back to work and when you have time, to look at your risk management file. Okay, you've probably all heard of accident reports. So if someone slips, falls, whatever it might be, you have to fill out an accident report. Okay, that's you need to know where that is, and it has to be filled out no matter what you've done, whether you've cut yourself, whether you've exposed yourself, burnt yourself, slipped, twisted your ankle. You want to make sure that you fill out those forms, so if anything goes wrong later on, you can claim off ACC, because you might have a little niggle now, but it could end up being way worse in 6 months' time. If you filled out an accident report form, they can go back and go, oh yes, it was an accident. You can get your treatment and your physiotherapies paid for. So that's why they have an accident report form. I want you to find out where that is at work. Now, a risk assessment, they also have forms for that. So anything new, any new illness, any new disease, any new client that they'll be taking on, they have to fill out a form of risk assessment of, could this client be at danger of others? Is this client vulnerable to trips and falls? Does this client get dizziness often? Has this client already got certain conditions like a huge ulcer, and could this ulcer get worse? So no matter what it is, and because we're trying to identify it to healthcare assistants, a management should be always analysing risk assessments. And when they find out all the risks of an individual, they need to then find a way of, can't always eliminate, but definitely avoid or find a skill of how to deal with that risk. So here's when you do find your risk assessment at work, they all have different headings. Here's one that's quite familiar. The principles are your headings. So when you've identified this risk, you have to identify the risk and you describe it. Then you need to analyze it. How bad of a high risk is this? Okay, is it just something very minimal that can be fixed? Or is it something that's ongoing and occurring often, and maybe staff need to have a whole training process? I don't know. So that's when you start evaluating that risk. You need to plan on how you are going to manage that risk. Okay, then you don't always need all of these headings. Once you've planned, then you need to implement that plan. You may have to buy specialist equipment. Okay, so if a client has come in and they have poor balance and maybe they have severe dementia, you may have to implement that this person needs a walker or he needs a stroller so he can stop and he can balance himself. So you've implemented something on that risk. Now, whenever you are doing a risk plan or a risk assessment, the most important of all is that where you have implemented or put action needed, you sign it and you date it. Okay, so for an example, and this is one of the biggest key things. If you've done a informal risk assessment on Mr. Jones, I don't know, so and so, and just like we said, he has frequent falls, he has severe dementia, and he's frail. You have suggested, oh, I think we should get him a stroller, a walker, so he's still mobile, he's still empowered, but he can balance himself. Okay, you've passed this message on. The best thing to do is to put this in writing, okay, and you have to sign so you've written all the risks down, you've made a plan, hopefully you've implemented this plan, and then you have to sign the date, your name of doing this risk assessment, who you passed a message on to, and have they acted on it. If they haven't acted on it, they need a date of when they need to implement this plan. Okay, so some people get these risk assessments for a bad work ethic. They see what needs to be done, but they don't act on it. And then there's an incident. Does that make sense to you? You can always go back, if it's you personally, and say, I put this down. We said we needed to get a stroller for Mr. whatever, Mr. Jones, and you haven't acted on that. Your name is cleared. But the person you pass it on to, your authority person, there is no way he or she can come back on you and say, you knew that person was at risk. Why didn't you tell me? You can say, bang, boom, it's all there. So there is reasons for all these risk assessments. It's mainly because you want the best for that person. The best for that person. All risk assessment reports looks very, very different. I tried to Google some online. I looked at the Toyo Hall My risk assessments, and I just evaluated and said, what are the most common headings? And here's a real easy one. Risk identified and described. Okay, so this is a principle. There was a sink and it was dripping on the floor, and it will get wet. Right, where was it? Exactly where it was. So it was in the maternity, ward 3, cubicle 5. I mean, even on there, you could actually go on to say cubicle 5, left-hand side. You know, you need to be as specific as you can. What did you do there and then? That's what you need to say, and how you tried to eliminate the risk the best you can. You've temporarily eliminated the risk. So your action was then to call the plumbers. Okay. So you might not be able to call the plumber. So you might have to go to your supervisor or your manager, because they're the ones that pays the bills, and they have to call the plumber. But just by having a risk assessment like this, you have analysed it. You understand this could be a potential danger, and you've passed on the message. This here and now will save you. Okay, it will save you. Lots of these things don't get done. They're just verbal, and it's all, yeah, we know about that. But sometimes you've got to put things in writing, okay, and send it in an email so it's always there. And if they say, no, you didn't, you can go back to your emails and go, bang, I sent it to you on rah-de-rah day, rah-de-rah day. Hopefully it never happens, but when you keep it formal like this, it gets acted on, all right? So this is to help answer your risk assessment. The principles, there are many different principles. There's some. You can actually go online and have a look at principles. It's very, very similar, but you might find you have different headings. All right. So context identification, analyze, evaluate, respond. And then this one's got a different one. Risk identified, analyze it, evaluate, plan, and implement. So use your own words, find maybe your own headings or use these headings, but just say what they mean. Okay, they are what they are, and just have a little description of what they mean. Okay, and how it basically benefits you in a healthcare setting. So it's quite a formal form. Neat. And there's a little bit more about the risk and why we're doing it and so forth. So have a little read. You just want to make sure that risk is eliminated. It's basically to cause no harm, non-maleficence. That's what we did for ethics, didn't we? If you were to ignore risk, you'd be in a lot of trouble, All right, let's go back to supervising. Here we go. Right, so you've done a little bit about at the start the difference between leader, coach, and mentor. All right. Now, a supervisor is possibly on that path as well, isn't it? Because it's someone you look up to. Let's get you back up there. Thank you. It's someone that you look up to, and there are lots and lots of benefits of a good supervisor. Okay, so if you have a supervisor that follows all the principles, and there's many, many here, a good supervisor benefits yourself immensely. All right. A good supervisor that is looking over you and someone that you can go to is constantly wanting to improve your work skills. A good supervisor will see the level you are at and see if you should be going further or staying where you are. A good supervisor will be able to monitor your technique. Okay, so you're not hurting yourself, you're not injuring anyone else. Okay, a good supervisor will know if you're not getting burnt out, or you're stressed, or you're worried, or you're treated unfairly. So a good supervisor does go on the same role as a coach and a leader and a mentor all in one, but it's a supervisor in a whole is someone that is going to make your quality of work improve, basically. Okay, it makes it improve. So here you go. You've got some principles here. They are what they are, which is pretty cool. Maintenance of clinical skills and quality practice. So if you've done blood pressures all your life, this person, she's been doing blood pressures for the last 10 years. A good supervisor is always upskilling and updating. And when they go in and monitor and watch that person taking blood pressures, there might be certain things that person needs to upskill on. Okay. Prevention of burnout related. So I've got a little link there. It's just an article on supervisors in the nursing industry. And that's where I got some of these principles from as well. It just talks about how a good, healthy supervisor empowers and lifts up the other person, so to speak, makes them better. And you want always to be better. So you never want to be scared of a supervisor. You want to make sure that they're a role model to you. Hey. So for an example, I want you to pick two of those principles that I've just flicked from. So any of these ones or any of these ones. Pick two and explain it. Okay, so I picked the maintenance of clinical skills and quality practice. How is this principle effective to you as a healthcare worker? All right, so if I've got a supervisor and this is one of the principles, how is that effective to me? I mentioned it earlier because as staff, here we go, I'd write something like, as staff get busier and busier, some qualities get rushed and are not performed well. This could lead to injury and misdiagnosis. So if you're doing lots of personal keys and manual handling and you're getting rushed and your technique will suffer, and there's no one there to tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, be careful, you're twisting when you're moving someone, you're going to put your back out, let's try this new technique. If there's no one there to help you and to tap you on the shoulder to say that, you're going to end up injuring your back, aren't you? Observations, if you're rushing in taking someone's temperature and you haven't asked the previous questions, so the person has just been for a run, just been for a jog, they're hot, it's been a hot day and their temperature is high, because you haven't found out enough information beforehand, they might have a high temperature and then you've misdiagnosed them as having a fever giving them medicine that they don't need because you didn't do your preloading. Okay? Same with pulse, same with breathing, same with all those clinical observations that we're going to do a lot more in class. You have to preload, and you have to ask all those before questions before you take the obs. Otherwise, you could get a result that you don't need, which is false. And like I said, you don't want them taking medication that they don't need. Cool. Yeah, ongoing in-house training. So to keep this of maintenance of clinical skills and quality practice at a high level, there's no harm in always having extra training sessions. I know some people go, oh, we have it 3 times a year and it's so boring. You know what? You do pick up bad habits. I do all the time, and it's always good to refresh. And they normally make it a really good thing to get you all communicating well. And there are skills. There's skills that you learn off everybody. So it's always handy to have ongoing in-house training. So I hope this helps. It's only a small part of your last part of your reflective journal, and I hope these things help. So principles of supervisor, when you become a supervisor, which you will, I hope you understand why you are a supervisor, and I hope you are always going to maintain all these principles. All right, so have a good read and think about, is my supervisor supporting me in this way? And you might have to ask some good questions, and it might be that they're really busy, but there will be a time where there is a low time and you can actually ask, and then also go into the risk management. Just remember, you're always risk assessing. No matter what you do, you're always going to be risk assessing. Start thinking in your head, could that potentially cause harm? Could that potentially cause danger? Look at all those hazards. Hear all those hazards. Could it cause any of these hazards? When you start thinking and analysing any of these hazards, your workplace becomes a safer environment, I guess. You're picking up certain things that not everybody would notice. So you're up in your game and you're bettering yourself. All right, that's all for me. I've got to do my urinary and digestive system now. So have fun, keep your bubble, and can't wait to see you all very soon. Bye.